I'd like to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger and Kim Kardashian, which I think is how most sentences probably begin in hell. I should preface what I'm about to say by reminding you that I am a complete and utter lunatic, and everything I say should probably be viewed in that context. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the biggest movie star of the 80s and most of the 90s. This is despite the fact that he had only slightly more acting ability than a paper plate with an angry face drawn onto it. After that, he became governor of the state of California, which is pretty much the highest political office someone not born in this country can achieve. After he served his term, he decided to return to the silver screen and resume his highly successful film career, but what followed was a series of flops. A few modest hits, and not one, but two failed attempts to resurrect his groundbreaking Terminator franchise. Why didn't it work? Did Arnold lose his charisma? Did the world of movies move past the sort of films that Arnold was known for? Did a new generation of filmgoers just not care about Schwarzenegger anymore? All of those answers contain some of the truth, but they're all pretty shallow explanations to me. Let's think about what the 80s were as a decade. The 80s were Ronald Reagan. The 80s were unfettered capitalism. The 80s were the decade of Wall Street and greed. The 80s were the decade of male hyper-competitiveness, you know? I've got the bigger dick. It makes an anaconda look like an inchworm. Oh yeah? Well, I've got the coolest car. It breaks the sound barrier when it's fucking parked. Oh yeah? Well, I got the hottest chick, man. Her pussy is sweeter than a caramello. Oh yeah? Well, I'm the most badass dude in existence. I kick 30 asses before breakfast just to work up an appetite. Oh yeah? Well, I'm the richest man you've ever seen. I could buy your ass with my pocket change and still have enough left over to drive home in a different luxury car than the one I drove here in. Oh yeah? Well, I'm the most powerful and respected man you've ever seen. When I walk into a room, people hold their breath until I give them permission to use my oxygen, bitch. Basically, the decade was a Chuck Norris meme, where men inserted themselves into the role of Chuck Norris. If you didn't embody some form of hyper-masculine ideal, you were a pussy, and you'd never have the sexual attention of the ladies, you'd never have the admiration of your fellow men. It was really a very primitive decade of social regression, if we look at it honestly. It was the era when Arnold ascended to superstardom. But now it's the 2020s, and increasingly we're seeing that the way of the world is a little bit more feminine. Women are ascendant. The values of society, good or bad, are becoming more feminine. Men's razor blade commercials feel the need to lecture us about our toxicity. Our once masculine heroes are being replaced by female equivalents. Women as eye candy is being pushed out of the mainstream as we're told that our male gaze is a tool of objectification. The slogan, "The future is female," is being pushed in several corners of our society, and we're being given a lot of signals as men that we are becoming obsolete. One of the marks of a powerful woman, after all, is that she don't need no man. It's not all bad news for men, of course. The good news is that we're under far less pressure to be straight and cisgender and rich and tough and good providers and so on and so forth. Those pressures haven't vanished, of course, but they're no longer the ubiquitous clarion call of our entire culture. We're more free to express ourselves without the rigid expectations of hypermasculinity being imposed on us. Now, a lot of what I'm saying here still depends on region, socioeconomic status, and a bunch of other bullshit. I don't want to oversimplify, but for the most part, men are under less pressure. The flip side is that we also feel like we have less purpose. And while we're more free than ever to explore different ideas of identity, we're also becoming less free to embrace traditional notions of masculinity as they are increasingly being labeled toxic or looked at as being regressive or traditional. And when I say traditional, what I'm talking about is the latter half of the 20th century. I'm talking about the idea of masculinity that, to my perception, peaked in the 1980s. Speaking of the 1980s, let's bring this back to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Kim Kardashian. Forget about her? Okay, well, she's back. What do these two possibly have in common? What do they possibly have to do with all this gender politics stuff I'm rambling about? Well, for me, it all boils down to this. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the ultimate celebrity of the 80s, and to a lesser extent the 90s, because he typified the ideal of that time. Kim Kardashian is the ultimate celebrity of the 2000s, at least so far, because she typifies the ideals of this time. The 80s was an age of masculinity. Arnold Schwarzenegger's body was a hyperbolic exaggeration of the male form. He had like more muscles in one ass cheek than pretty much all of you watching this have in your entire bodies, okay? Every masculine feature of him is exaggerated to the max. His muscles are huge. His penis is implied to be huge in several films. Schwarzenegger himself, super rich, super successful, super powerful. As governor of California eventually, his voice was unnaturally deep. Men wanted to be him. Women wanted to fuck him. He was the alpha male in the time of masculinity. You know how hard it is to be the alpha male in a time of hyper-masculinity? You need an Arnold Schwarzenegger to do that. You need someone who's so masculine that it almost feels like a parody. He did more than embody the 80s ideal of masculinity. He hyperbolized it, okay? He brought it to an apex that no ordinary man could reach. The 2000s, though, they're an age of ascendant femininity. And Kim Kardashian's body is a hyperbolic exaggeration of the female form. Her ass is so big that NASA scientists once debated whether or not it should be classified as a planet. Ultimately, they decided it was just an asteroid. Get it? You know, if a man drew, like, a Kim Kardashian figure as, like, this is my new comic book character, or, like, this is my new video game character in this game I programmed, that man would be called sexist for creating an unrealistic female body type that invites the dreaded male gaze. Kim Kardashian is rich, of course, because whether or not our culture is masculine or feminine, you know, capitalism still remains deeply entrenched. More importantly, she's an entrepreneur that has turned herself into the brand. She gets money simply for existing, simply for being so fucking special. She captures, and once again, it does not matter how true this actually is, she captures an attitude that resonates with women and girls of today. I don't need no man, I'm a bad bitch, I'm confident in myself, even if I have an emotional moment, it's just like, I'm over it, you know, I move past it. Women want to be her. Men want to bounce on that fucking ass like a trampoline. She is the alpha female in a time of burgeoning femininity. I don't know if, as the slogan says, the future is female. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. 2020 is such a weird year that all bets are off as far as what the future will hold, or even if there will be a future. I'm reminded of a line from the great poet Marilyn Manson in his song Crucifixion in Space. He said, "We are dead and tomorrow's canceled because of things we did yesterday." I feel like 2020 is the year that line came into its own. But here's what I hope, if I'm going to permit myself any hope, which I usually don't. I hope that the nascent idea of gender abolitionism takes hold. I hope that we can stop fucking around with all this stupid gender politics nonsense, because I don't want the future to be female or male, masculine or feminine. I want those limiting and frankly stupid concepts to go away and free up individuals to explore themselves and their values without needing, you know, one of two templates, you know, that are based on, you know, genitals in the most limiting sense, or even gender identity in a slightly less limiting sense. To build ourselves around these prepackaged identities, it's so boring, it's so rote, it's so empty, it's so fucking desolate, you know? So what do you think? Should the future be female? Should it return to a more male paradigm? Do we need a new idea of what constitutes masculine and feminine? Or is it time, like I just said, for those concepts to die out altogether? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section down below. Anyway, subscribe to my channel, hit that stupid alert bell if you actually want to be told when I upload new stuff, buy my book, check out my podcast, follow my social media, sell me the deed to your house if you got one. Actually, don't sell it to me. Just give it to me. That's better. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm the amazing gender abolitionist. Peace the fuck out.